Good day, everyone, and welcome to the world of the International Fabtalks. How many of us are really interested in saving the environment for the future generation? How many of us are not selfish? How many of us are concerned about the lives of others apart from our own? We have a wonderful celebrity and guest with lots of love to the environment that he has contributed till date, wanting to save it in different ways, wanting to create awareness, etc. We'll get to know how we should also be responsible towards the environment that we are in and how we could save it and preserve it for the coming generations. Join us, friends, to welcome our celebrity and guest for today, who's here on special request. He's none other than Mr. Sridhar Parthasarathy, joining us all the way from Chennai, Tamil Nadu, India. We'll get to know more about him, his journey, celebrate his life, and his concern for the environment as well. It's an awareness session for each one of us. Hello, sir, and welcome to the session. Thank you so much for being a part of our journey. Thank you for patronizing the International Fab Talks. Thank you.
Good afternoon and good evening and good morning to a few. So I'm absolutely pleased to be part of this program, and the best of my abilities that answer the questions and get started.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for being so kind and polite to take out some time for us to create awareness today with regard to the environment and, of course, to inspire us in the right way. So with your permission, I go ahead and share your profile and we begin the session. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Friends, as I earlier mentioned, our guest for today is none other than Mr. Sridhar Parthasarathy. He's a retired territory business manager and he's connected with the pharmaceutical industry. I'd like to add more. He's also interested in the environmental issues. Let's get to know more about that as to how Sir is having his own pharmaceutical business running from the 2020s. Let me put that right. Sir owns a pharmaceutical company or a business since 2020 till date. And apart from that, very passionate with the environment. Now, he has this feeling that he's not only going to contribute as an entrepreneur, he's also going to contribute as an environmentalist. Let us get to know more about his journey. I'd like to go in detail and share more about Sir. As I mentioned, he's Mr. Sridhar. He's here with us. He graduated in chemistry, dear friends, from A.M.Jain College, Meenambakkam, Chennai. Later on, he joined if I could put that right, Boehringer. I put it right for everyone. He joined Boehringer Mannheim German pharmaceutical company. If I mispronounced that, kindly forgive me. As a medical representative, and his journey began from there on by joining this wonderful German company called as Boehringer Mannheim as a medical rep. Later on, he joined Nicholas Piramal. Finally, he retired from Abbott as the territory business manager. That's really wonderful. Growing in your career, the chosen career, and later transforming into a wonderful individual, focusing on saving the environment. That's really nice. It's a wonderful journey, transition, you could say. Sir was very much interested in the environment and the various issues that affected the environment right from his early days when he was in college. Later on, he started even lecturing and giving wonderful awareness sessions in various schools, colleges, organizations, different kinds of institutions. He was invited and still being invited to create awareness sessions or to enlighten people about the environmental related issues. And very important ones where he has been focusing his time and energy to enable people to understand that everyone should participate in saving the environment. One such session at VIT Vellore, Guindy Engineering College, Technip Industries, Chennai Petroleum Corporation, etc. The latest one is the possible use of artificial intelligence in climate change mitigation. That's really wonderful. We really need all of that. And as I earlier mentioned, Sir has his own pharmaceutical business as well, which he started in the year 2020. Let's get to know more about the entrepreneur within him, more about the environmentalist within him, and how does he use the gift of 24 hours. We'll get to know more about him. Dear Sir, now we'd like you to introduce yourself to us. I've done my bit from my side. How would you define the real Sridhar?
Sure. Thank you for a very warm introduction. Brief but very good. As you had mentioned, I had joined this company, Boehringer Mannheim, was a pharmaceutical company in the year 1984 in Chennai. Okay. Then in majority, the whole part of my life has been only in Chennai in various capacities, in various companies. I would add on to say that Boehringer Mannheim, as a German company, they sold their company lock, stock, and barrel to Nicholas Piramal. So I moved into Nicholas. And later, Nicholas is a big conglomerate of companies, various companies. Lock, stock, and barrel, they sold their company to Abbott. So in effect, I did not change companies. The company changed itself. Okay, and finally I had come out of Abbott. So what happened was, much before I joined Boehringer Mannheim, I was a member of the United States, and I mean the part of my professional career. So I moved from medical representative to territory business manager. Alongside, I had to train people, classroom, field training. I was involved in the diabetes range of products promotion in Chennai and other parts of southern India. And training was my very passionate thing, and the company saw the potential in me to train newer graduates who keep coming into the company in the field of diabetes. It's a very exciting field. So I had this wonderful privilege of marketing product promotion, marketing of cardiovascular preparations and diabetes preparations throughout my life, and a lot of diagnostic products. It's not about drugs alone. I had the excellent privilege of marketing blood glucose meters and test strips for determining for cardiac failure, heart attacks, and test strips for determining albumin release in the urine, and various other things, diagnostic products. That's a fantastic kind of exposure I've had throughout my career. And finally, I retired from Abbott International, Chennai. Much before I had come out, much before I had joined my pharmaceutical company, I used to be a member of United States Information Service Library, Chennai. So and later I joined Boehringer. During those times, Google was not available. Okay, much of the scientific literature, either the company provides you to talk to doctors, or you had to hunt them out yourself. So I used to visit the United States Information Service library, where a lot of new advancement in medicine used to come, in diabetes, cardiovascular medicine. There was no Xerox at that time, no Google at that time. So I had to make notes, and I have to make a cogent note about it, and then send it to my company sometimes, or sometimes discuss those things with the doctors. And that, it's a good thing, the image of myself, the image of my company went up. So that was a classical part which I did. And I would say it's a divine providence that alongside, I had an opportunity to browse through a magazine called World Watch magazine. World Watch, even today, it exists in the United States of America. It's a non-profit organization which is involved in sustainable society. They talk about a wide variety of factors which go into what a sustainable living looks like. They talk about food production, they talk about fuel, they talk about global warming, they talk about human demographics and things like that. So I had an opportunity to browse through the magazines of World Watch, and later borrowed, there's a book called State of the World. Every year they'll produce one book called State of the World. I think now it comes in PDF. Okay. So I read notes and things like that. Get passionate. So environment became a raging obsession for me. Okay. And I was very sure that I will leave the pharmaceutical product promotion line by the year 80, 89, 88, like that, go abroad and do environmental studies. It was a raging obsession. But unfortunately, it could not happen. But I didn't allow my liking, my passion on environment to die down. It carried on. And much later, around the year 2006, 2008, I had a lot of opportunities to talk to, give lectures on environment. So now what I do is, apart from my professional business, I write on environment for schools, school magazines. I talk on environment on invitation. And that's how I go about my life.
Very impressive, sir. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's really very nice, very inspiring. Now, dear sir, you are connected to the environment. That's really nice. And you write for various magazines, creating awareness as well as giving lectures and inspiring people to do their very best. That's really nice. Now, the question here arises, the first career in your life, like, why did you enter into the pharmaceutical industry? Was it a calling or was it a choice? What was it?
I would say there was no choice because as a graduate in those days, the 83 and 84 like that, professional options were limited. Either you study, do your research, or you join a bank, or you join a insurance company. Options were very limited, and our family was struggling. And I had an elder brother who was a medical representative in this company called Boots. Okay, and so he talked to a few people, and I got an interview with a few other companies. I couldn't make it. And finally, Boehringer Mannheim came across. It was known as Boehringer Knoll earlier. So I made the grade. So I think my brother influenced me to get into this job. It's a fantastic job. And something you pour medicines into a crippled society, it's very important. So I liked it. That's how I would say it was no choice.
Thank you for being very honest and
Yeah.
very transparent with regard to that. I mean, it would really inspire the younger generation to take what comes their way sometimes, not wanting to be stuck where they are. And, certain youngsters have a desire to have just what they want. But if there are different avenues open to you, go for it, take it up. And you can try out yourself, like giving interviews in various organizations where you are selected. As you mentioned, you've tried a lot and then finally you are selected over here. Yeah. So this is a beautiful message for all the youngsters to keep trying. You will definitely get a wonderful job. You will love it in the long run. Now, dear sir, you've done wonderful, justice to your job. Like for me now, there are several people who I know among my friend circle and family as well. There are people who are struggling with the issue of diabetes. Like, if you can just enlighten us about that before we go into the environmental aspects, I'll really be thankful to you. They will also be thankful to you for sharing that.
I'm very glad you asked this question. Because throughout my life, I was promoting only diabetes products and diagnostic products which are aligned to diabetes. I'm very glad you asked this question. Before I venture into that, I would like to tell you and the people who are listening to me that I'm not a doctor. So there are some aspects of diabetes, if at all I touch upon the periphery of drugs, which I know, please be sure that you catch up with your doctor and put up that question and learn from them. So I've been promoting products. So don't take it for granted that you can alter your lifestyle or change your medication just because I told you or told them. That's very important. That's very important. Okay, diabetes. You would find it interesting, all others would find it interesting, that the incidence, the prevalence of diabetes in India in the year 1970, both urban and rural put together, scientists have done a lot of epidemiological studies. I mean, doctors, few of them are very good friends of mine, my customers of mine. They have done beautiful epidemiological studies in India, both urban and rural. They had determined that the prevalence of diabetes in India, way back in the year 1970s and a few years, around the 1970s, was hardly 2 to 3%. All factors put, all the confounding variables taken into account, it was 2 to 3%. Today, it is not less than 8 to 9%. And in Chennai, like in a city like Chennai or Mumbai or any other place, I'm talking about the adult population. Amongst the adult population in Chennai, Delhi, or Bangalore, today, epidemiological studies show the prevalence of diabetes is 16 to 14 to 16 to 18%. That was 3%. So, and among the adult population, this is diabetes. There is a condition called pre-diabetes, also called impaired glucose tolerant. Diabetes is of two varieties. The 13 varieties are there. Let's concentrate on two varieties, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is purely insulin dependent. If you don't put insulin, you're done for. Okay. Type 2 is multifactorial. It can be insulin requiring, it can be drugs, It can be lifestyle changes and many other things like that. So we are talking about type 2 diabetes, okay? Multifactorial disease. So the prevalence of diabetes today is 16%, 18% in Chennai. Now people don't become type 2 diabetic day after tomorrow. Many of them go through a process called the pre-diabetic stage, where they are not normal, their values are not normal, and neither are they in the diabetic range. They are the pre-diabetic stage. And epidemiological studies regarding the pre-diabetic stage also shows in Chennai, amongst the adult population, let's say between 15 and 70 years of age, the prevalence of impaired glucose tolerance, they call it IGT, is around 15%. So roughly 30% of the adult population in Chennai or any other comparable city in Chennai or like Chennai is around 30%. So 30% of the adult population is not normal. They are not euglycemic. They are either diabetic or a pre-diabetic. So if this pre-diabetic stage is not taken care properly, they're all jumped to become diabetic. Okay? So that's how it is. And epidemiologists have done a lot of studies as to why such a drastic increase, and diabetes by itself doesn't kill. So there are some complications which set up in diabetes over a period of time. Let's say somebody is a diabetic becomes a type 2 diabetic at the age of 30. You will find that another 20 years, even a well-controlled diabetic, you will find that 20 to 25 years, let's say 50 to 55, you'll find that complications setting. They call microvascular complications, macrovascular complications. So their kidneys, their eye, incidence of heart attack, stroke, and many other problems keep cropping up. That's why taking care of diabetes is extremely important. Okay, so diabetes by itself doesn't kill. It could be the cardiovascular disease. You can be maimed due to stroke, or you can get a kidney disease. Chronic kidney disease can be compounded. It can get worsened with diabetes. In fact, they'd say 40% of all chronic kidney disease patients who are lying up for dialysis, diabetes can be attributed to 40% of that. And lower knee amputations, 40 to 50%, it can be attributed to poor control of diabetes and poor control of taking care of one's feet. Okay, so that's how it is. And epidemiologists have done a lot of studies to show that diabetes keeps progressing. Okay, that could be because of bad food habits, lack of exercise, obesity, stress, and many other factors. Okay, and in countries like America, where obesity is very high, they have found out that it's very easy to become a diabetic, because food that is very good food by way of fresh vegetables and fruits, they are very costly. Energy dense foods are very cheap, like hamburgers and things like that. They're very cheap. Coke, Pepsi, like that, sugar drinks, they're very cheap. So people take to cheap alternatives, they become diabetics. Okay, so type 2 diabetes is multifactorial. The prevalence of diabetes is around 15% of the adult population in any place in India, and it keeps progressing. Moreover, the younger people are becoming diabetic. Let us say it was also known as adult onset diabetes earlier, where you will find the incidence of diabetes amongst the 50s and 60s age group. But today, unfortunately, 30s and 20s, they become type 2 diabetic. Leave alone type 1, type 2 diabetic, where the symptoms are not very fast. They're not very obvious. Somebody can become a diabetic. They can remain a diabetic for 10 years. They may be blissfully unaware of that unless they do a test. So the best thing for any adult would be to run a test if they've not done so. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing that. I was very patiently listening to you. It was very, very, I should say, a lovely awareness session that you've created. And as you said, you have to go in for a diabetic test to find out if you are, pre-diabetic, or maybe you are a diabetic. As you said, blissfully, people are unaware of it.
Yes.
Now, if you could just do us a favor and tell us what kind of test does one need to take in order to know if they are suffering from diabetes, like type 1 or type 2 diabetes?
The type 1 diabetes where the people become insulin dependent, it's very dramatic. For example, somebody becomes a type 1 diabetic at the age of 5. The symptoms are dramatic. They'll look like a skeleton. They'll not put on weight, excessive urination. They'll become, susceptible to diseases quite very often. And it's very difficult for a doctor to miss out type 1. Okay, that's a very different part. Type 2 is, it's very harmless. People will not know about that. The best thing is run a simple blood test. And more so, if your family, if somebody is a diabetic, your father is a diabetic, your mother is a diabetic, there's a 90% chance that you will become a diabetic. Okay, so if there's a family history of diabetes, there are some scores. If there's a family history of diabetes, every chance that one will become a type 2 diabetic. Second, a very sedentary lifestyle. Some people who keep on working on a computer, never get up, don't exercise, they are prone to get type 2 diabetes. Third, people who gulp on a lot of food, fast food, things like that. And fourth, people who do not exercise. And people who have an abdominal obesity, they call it truncal obesity. There are some measurements I'll not tell you now. You have to go to a doctor. Truncal obesity, they're normal. They look very normal, but you will find they have a big paunch. They are the ones who can become diabetes, because you will find, see, as you, many of you may know or may not know, insulin is produced in our body. So once somebody becomes fat, and especially fat around the stomach, they call it abdominal obesity. There's every chance that the insulin which your body is producing may not work. Sufficient insulin will be available in our body, it may not work. So what happens? There's a syndrome called insulin resistance syndrome. So what happens? Slowly, it's predominantly present in patients of impaired glucose tolerance. That is why when somebody goes to a doctor with problems like, with the elevated sugars, the doctors immediately tell them, lessen your weight, start exercising, stop gulping on carbohydrates. Let us see, they will not put you on a drug unless the sugar values warrants medication well early enough. Many of the doctors will give you a month or two before they'll start you exercise, food, and things like that, bringing down their weight. You will find many of the people become normal. But that's not the time you say, I've become normal. Okay, let me not go back to the doctor. Once you are 30 years old, it is better to get back to the doctor every 6 months or a year, especially if you have a family history of diabetes, whether you are diabetic or not, because suddenly it will crop up. And very well controlled studies have shown, 5 very big trials have shown that if you and I can take care of diabetes very well for the first 5 to 10 years of the prevalence of diabetes. Somebody is a diabetic, for the first 5 years, if we can take care of diabetes well, complications can be avoided. So that is why, if you have the problems which I told you, family history, obesity, bad lipid levels, sedentary lifestyle, gulping on your food, no exercise, better get back to your doctor. Even if you're very normal, if you're an athlete, if you're 30 years old, 35 years, get back to your doctor, run a simple sugar test. And what are other tests to do, the doctor has to decide.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. Thank you very much for enlightening us about our health. That's really nice. Thank you so much. Now, sir, this one question related to diabetes, and then we dive into the environment session. Now, I have seen certain families where the parents have no diabetic issues. They're perfect, but their children tend to get it. There's no history of diabetes in the family, but then the children have it at a later stage during their their stage once they cross 50 or 40s or 50s. So how is this possible, and what is it, if you could share?
Right. See, when you talk about parents, okay, there is every chance that every good possibility that the parents had maintained excellent lifestyles. they would have cycled, they would have walked, taken the bus, and not much, plentiful bad food was not available then. Okay, so they would have had excellent lifestyles, and possibly their stress levels were also low. Okay, and possibly they had not checked also. So, and it is quite possible that the parents have been non-diabetics for large part of their lives. Let's say the parents are 70 years old and they are not diabetic. There's every possibility that children can become diabetic due to various problems which crop up. One of the main problems is stress today. Stress is a killer. Okay, and you will find a lot of younger people working in software companies. They earn well, they eat well, they drink well, they don't exercise, all these problems keeps cropping up. That's when the insulin resistance builds up. Their insulin cannot work properly, and they are in a lot of stress. They want to see the world 5 times before they are 30. Okay, and stress builds up. Stress is something which will pull out glucose from various organs in your body. It will pull out glucose from your liver. It will pull out glucose from the kidney, because when there is stress, the body immediately demands more glucose. So the body inherently pulls out glucose from various sources inside the body. That's why the glucose builds up. So stress is a very important factor, not only for diabetes, for cardiovascular disease, many other diseases. So how we manage our stress is extremely important. So that's why our parents could have led extremely stressless lives. We are leading stressful lives. Possibly.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. And I'm sure many of them will appreciate with what you've been just sharing now as to how they can go ahead and live a healthy life, free of diabetes, or maybe reverse, the way they are connected with this disease.
Possible.
Yes. So now we enter into this beautiful zone to getting to know how we can preserve and conserve the environment around us to save the resources for our future generations as well. Now, we'd like to know the difference between climate change and global warming. Are they the same or are they quite different? If you could enlighten us about climate change and global warming.
Good question. We should try to understand that the Earth has been warming, cooling by itself due to various factors. Okay, what we are concerned today is about man-made global warming, anthropogenic global warming. It's called anthropogenic global warming, man-made global warming, and various global warming. Tackling your question first, global warming precedes climate change. Scientists have determined that carbon dioxide and such greenhouse gases have been responsible for global warming. Okay, they have determined that the levels of carbon dioxide in the pre-industrial era are at the start of the industrialization, let's say around 1750s. Okay, the levels of carbon dioxide was hardly around 230, 250 parts per million. You divide air into a million, you will find that the level of carbon dioxide was hardly 230 parts per million at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Today, it is almost double. It is 440 parts per million. Okay. So, and there's a direct link between, linear link between the levels of carbon dioxide that is built up due to man-made industrialization. Man is responsible for all that, and global warming. Now the average temperature has gone up by nearly 1 degree centigrade. From the pre-industrial era till today, the temperature has gone up by just 1 degree centigrade, and awareness about global warming has built up. That side to global warming. Climate change is what happens due to global warming. Okay, so global warming precedes climate change. Global warming by itself, people don't connect the dots. They say this year it's hot, last year it was cool. In fact, it is raining in Chennai now. It's very cool. Okay, So this is not part of, it's about a series of years and what happens to our climate due to anthropogenic global warming. So global warming precedes climate change. Okay.
Yes, that's really nice. Thank you so much for sharing that. And even I was not aware of it till date. The way you've shared that very clearly, thank you so much. That's really nice. So there's another question coming up, sir. How can one reduce their carbon footprint on this planet?
Carbon footprint is a nice name. It's a fancy name that creates awareness in the first place. There are plenty of ways to do it. Okay. Let's remember that there are things which a government can do. There are things which a government cannot do. There are things which we need to do it ourselves. How can we reduce our carbon footprint? Primarily, there are various things which one can do to reduce our carbon footprint. Primarily, what we eat. I'm not talking about vegetarian or non-vegetarian. How we eat. If food wastage can be avoided, today, research shows that close to 30 to 50% of food is being wasted. The hard times, the tough times a farmer puts hard work to create food, manufacture food for us, 50% of food is wasted. It can be at the plucking stage. It can be at the supermarket level. It can be at the sorting level, or it can be at the household level. Okay. The first 3 or 4 levels is not in our hands. But finally, when it comes to the amount of food which is being thrown out in the households, especially the rich household, in hotels, is enormous. Okay. So let's say around 20%. I've got data to show that 20% or 30% of the food is wasted at the household levels. And when you think about wastage of food, let's not think about a morsel of food. For creating that morsel of food, think about the amount of fertilizers that have gone into growing it up. Think about the amount of water that has been pumped to grow that food. Think about the transportation that has happened to bring that food to our tables. All these is carbon. All these emit carbon. Agriculture is a very big emitter of carbon. And we have to feed a huge world, a population of 8 billion people. So agriculture is a very important contributor to carbon. So if we can reduce our food waste, that much you're reducing the carbon. If you can take public transportation, if possible, good enough. Taking a private car with a single person is definitely more carbon intensive than a bus with 40 passengers. I would add on to say 40 modern cars with a single passenger destroys the environment more than a polluting bus with 40 passengers in it. Second, so if you can take the public transportation. Third, very important, if you can reuse materials. The manufacturing sector uses a lot of carbon. So if you can reuse and recycle materials, good. Fourthly, very simple, if we can switch off our fans and lights and air conditioners as often as it is possible, not required. So much of you and I can reduce our electricity. Electricity throws out lots of carbon. It's a very refined form of energy. So you and I can reduce our power consumption, electricity consumption by nearly 20%. It's quite possible. Just switching off lights and fans. That much carbon less in the air. So food, lifestyle, reusing, recycling, reducing. It's quite possible. We can live comfortable lifestyles by reducing our wants. I wouldn't say a very minimalistic living, but let's say 20 to 30% we can cut down. That much amount of less carbon you're throwing out. So that's the carbon footprint coming down.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for sharing that. Thank you so much. Now we have another question, sir, with regard to the impact of single-use plastics.
Single-use plastics, especially the 20 micron variety, it's very thin, it's very comfortable. You and I can go to a market, buy it, and come home, throw it. What happens? No, it's well known. I don't have to say it's well known that single-use plastics cannot be recycled. It cannot be made into another form which can be recycled. It has to be thrown. So what happens is it keeps accumulating. Single-use plastics keeps accumulating, and the natural cycles of the soil cannot degrade it. It keeps floating around. I would say uh, if the way to heaven is paved with good deeds, the way to hell is paved with plastic, especially the single-use plastic. So we can avoid single-use plastics by carrying our own bags. As simple as that. It's avoidable disaster. And furthermore, if I may add, many times the single-use plastics find their way to the oceans and rivers, and the natural cycles, the pressure and temperature of the oceans breaks it down to smaller particles, millions of smaller particles of plastic that enters the food chain, and that can play havoc to our endocrine systems if we consume seafood.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for sharing that. Sir, are there any alternatives or eco-friendly methods to overcome the single-use plastic?
Education. First is banning. They tried in Chennai to ban the single-use plastics. That is not working. I think in a few places in the hill stations and in some places you cannot take single-use plastic, neither can they use them. It's not happening. Rules are not being enforced properly. So best thing is creating awareness, taking our own cloth bags, or buy a good thick plastic bags, keep reusing it. And especially I would say, we all buy our Bisleri or whatever, I will not mention the brand names. While traveling, we keep buying the plastic bottles of water, and as soon as we finish it, we throw it off. I discussed with one of my friends who is a professor of rubber technology and plastics. He's my classmate. I discussed with him. He says, any plastic bottle, okay, you can reuse it 100 times. Nothing happens to you, as long as you don't put very hot material into that. Let's say water. You buy a plastic bottle of water, you can keep reusing the bottle. Fill it up, consume, fill it up, consume. If after 100 uses, you can throw it off.
Yes, that's really nice. Thank you for sharing. Now, sir, you've been to several colleges and schools, various organizations and institutions, and imparting environmental education. How far have students and the people around who've been connected with you have had a change in behavior after your sessions? Have you seen a change and a great impact?
That is one part I did not follow up. Okay, I did not follow up. Honestly, I did not follow up. I believe that even in my own house, it is very difficult to change people. So unless the problems of climate change impacts us, we will not change. But I will keep doing my bit. If I may add, I was in Denmark, not in Denmark, in Norway recently. I went to my daughter's house. We all flew to Norway. I find Norway is an extremely rich country. Okay, a lot of people take to public transportation. They have excellent public transportation. They take to public transportation. What I'd like to make clear is that many of the Nordic countries, their environmental consciousness is very high, precisely because the impact of climate change is felt more in the Arctic or near the Arctic. It is not felt so here. This year, we are comfortable. We don't connect the dots. For example, if the food prices keep going up, we don't see the impact of climate change behind the food prices going up. We think it's a problem of the farmers, labor shortage, fertilizers prices going up, water table going down. It could be climate change. Okay, the impact of climate change is not yet felt, or we don't connect the dots. We don't ascribe any reason to climate change. We lead our lives, hectic lives. Whereas in the Nordic countries, they have seen the impact of climate change. They are feeling the heat because it warms higher in the polar regions than in the tropics. Okay, they are able to feel it. So unless we learn the hard way, it's difficult. I think spreading awareness is very important. That's what I'm involved in.
Yes, sir, that's really very true. Very, very true. Now, sir, if you could enlighten us about the various ways we could conserve water, save water in the right way. It's not only in our homes, but even outside as well. We've seen several government taps, like maybe at government places, like on the railway stations or in certain public areas. The water keeps leaking and no one takes the responsibility. No one's taking any concerned about it. Like, it's why me? Somebody else will do it. I have something more important. And even if there are some very good people like you who come forward and question the government or question the authorities that this is it, I mean, they will not be given that much of value and importance, and then it will be just pushed under the carpet. They'll not give that much of, the required amount of attention to it at the right time. Maybe later on they will do it, but on the spot, like, they will say, we look into it. Yes, we will do it. We've seen, like, maybe in the waiting rooms of railway stations, or it could be like anywhere, such a lot of wastage of water.
Yeah.
So what do you have to say about this?
Primarily, I would blame it on we are living in a very water surplus place. We are not living in a water deficient place.
Very
We
true.
are living in Chennai city. You open the tap, the water gushes. Okay, that's the first problem. The moment we understand we don't have much of anything, built-in mechanisms to conserve will follow. It will be a snowballing effect. It's not happening. Secondly, I would say that some good actions, some behavior should start from our homes. Okay, how water can be conserved? I told you about food. Food requires water to manufacture, to grow crops. If we can reduce our food wastage indirectly, you are saving the water. Second thing, if we are going to buy newer and newer materials, it's good to understand that creating materials from virgin ore, iron ore, aluminum, copper, whatever it is, creating materials or white goods from virgin ore consumes a lot of electricity, consumes a lot of water. Okay, so if we can reuse, for example, plastics, if we can reuse, recycle things, material, and India is a place where excellent labor is available to reuse things like that, recycle things like that. India is a world leader in recycling, but the problem is it is not very organized. The guy whom you and I see carrying a huge sack in our roads, taking in the plastics and paper and things like that, is as much an important person as a doctor or as an engineer.
Very, very true.
And they are all very important parts of our society, but it's not very organized. It should be organized. I would say, and another important, we are talking about water. It should be built in. We are living in a water surplus place. And I talked about food. I talked about recycling. And regarding in our own households, if somebody can use a mild shower, I have done it myself. If we can use a mild shower rather than using a bucket and putting water on ourselves, if you can use a mild shower, I'm very sure you will use 60 to 70% less water. The same goes true for washing vegetables, for washing clothes. I think there are plenty of ways we need to conserve water, and we can. And the simplest way is opening the tap slowly. The moment, and if while washing our vegetables or washing our vessels, you will find that 90% of the water is wasted. If you can open it slowly, you will find you can do a better washing. So 90% of the water doesn't do any job, it gets wasted. There are simple ways of doing it.
Yes, that's really nice. Thank you for sharing. Now, sir, the latest trend is environmental art. Have you heard of this? And if yes, if you could share your thoughts.
Environmental
Art.
ARCH?
A-R-T, art.
Environmental. No, I have not heard about that.
Yes.
Honestly, I haven't heard about that.
Yes, no worries. Now, sir, who do you think should take the initiative first? Like, should the adults begin, or the parents taking the initiative at home to enlighten their children or to create awareness, or is it the teachers, or is it like the elders of the society? Who should take the initiative to go forward and to create awareness in little children, catch them young, they say.
Very good.
Yes.
Each one of us. The kind of people who mentioned, each one of us have got a moral obligation to do that. Precisely because for the reason we are borrowing our future from our children. We have not inherited our earth from our forefathers. We are borrowing it from our children. Okay, and each one's responsibility to do that. I told you before in this program that primarily there is certain things, structural changes, policy changes a government can make, unless there is a behavioral change. In the newspaper headings, you'll find that international meetings on environment takes place. They're all headings. It passes off like a water of a duck's back or like a ship in the dark because we have got other things to do. Okay, it doesn't really impact us. And whatever international meetings takes place, whatever the policy changes takes place, unless there's a behavioral change in ourselves, little can be achieved. And that way, I think each one of us are responsible. And the most important thing is our incomes have gone up. As our incomes go up, energy use also, it's a lot of studies. There you'll find that people living in sub-Saharan Africa, their energy use is pitiful, nothing. You will find energy use enormously high in developed countries. Developed countries who haven't learned the hard way or who have enough resources to sustain themselves. So as the level, as our incomes go up, our energy use also goes up. So there is every necessity from all stakeholders, teachers, parents, children, educators, to see that environmental consciousness builds up at a very young age. And I believe I keep doing it. I don't know the response. I think it'll culminate in a good response.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. So have you heard about this little girl, Greta Thunberg? Like, if I could get her name right, she was concerned and she gave a wonderful speech. So have you heard of this little girl?
Yeah, she's a Swedish environmentalist. Good. So anything to do well, to occupy the minds of our people, anything, you need a poster girl or a poster boy. Okay. I would consider her like that. I'm something beyond that. She's doing a bit. Okay. And believe me, when it comes to conserving our environment, to follow policies which will mitigate climate change, policies, it all starts from each one of us. So being an environmentalist doesn't need a tag. It doesn't need an education. Okay, simple awareness. So each and every one of us is an environmentalist. It need not be a Medha Patkar or Thunberg or somebody. Each one of us is a built-in environmentalist. If that feeling can crop in, I think the world has achieved its bit.
Very true, very true. So that's really very fair. What you've shared, that's really nice. Now, so now let's go to the Indian government. Like, what are the initiatives by the Indian government taken so far with regard to improving the environment, not only in the urban areas, but also the rural areas as well? And the village interiors, you could say, in the tribal areas. How far has the government taken the steps? We've seen high-rise buildings, we've seen various lands transformed into concrete jungles, the IT sectors have opened up and all of that. So of course, we have to go on the path of modernization as well, but somewhere down the line, don't we think we are encroaching too much and damaging the environment?
That's the price mankind has paid over 2 centuries. Okay, at least the awareness is built up now. I believe the Indian government has done its parts well, structurally, policy-wise. By 2030, 50% of our electricity, see, when we talk about environment, it is not necessarily about reforestation or deforestation or pollution, plastic pollution, air pollution. That's one part. The most important, fundamentally, the fulcrum around which the world goes is energy. You can imagine that. I can imagine that. Any one of us can imagine that. We don't put our minds to it. The fulcrum around which the world revolves around today, apart from the axis of the earth, is energy. And 70% of today's energy comes from fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are responsible for putting carbon. Global warming, climate change, that snowballing effect. Now, it is very easy for developed countries to adopt policies to mitigate climate change because they are all very heavy users of energy. Cutting down on energy usage is possible, and they have done it. Public transportation, except for places like Canada and America, where it hasn't struck them yet because they are living energy surplus. Okay, you will find in Scandinavia for the amount of GDP, the per capita energy use for a unit of GDP has been coming down world over. Okay, so what was I telling you? It's very important that behavioral change needs to happen within us. Have I answered the question or have I veered around?
It's fine, sir. Excellent.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Now, sir, if I could focus now on ecotourism.
I'm sorry. I have not finished yet. I'm sorry.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I'm so sorry. We're talking about the Indian government. By 2030, see, 50% of electricity is likely to come from renewables. Coal, oil, and gas is contributing to 70% of India's electricity production. By 2030, it is likely to come from 50% from renewables. And furthermore, India is obliged to reduce its emissions by nearly 45% by the year 2030. We are building the largest solar pond, wind power, all this, are adding to renewables, which is around 16% now, likely to go to 50%. But unless a behavioral change comes from ourselves, it is very difficult for the country to do anything about it. I have money, I splurge, that attitude should go off. We can live very comfortable lives with lesser energy.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for sharing that. We appreciate that. Thank you very much. Now, sir, could we talk about ecotourism? Like it's the latest trend where people are given the access to prohibited areas, like where they could go and view the things in the natural, in the natural habitat, and it could be eco-friendly transportation, eco-friendly, the houses that are built, like when the tourists come over there, they could stay in eco-friendly houses, etc., getting to know the lifestyle of people in their natural habitats. Now, if this has, brought a change in the thought process of people, like usually now we have a lot of artificial parks of, the latest technology has been put in place, and several entertainment parks have come into existence. But there is something also called as ecotourism, where people could go down, bond with nature, bond with the original inhabitants of that area, get to know people. So what are your thoughts with regard to this?
This is a progress which cannot stop. Progress is not a progress. Regarding ecotourism, I have my own doubts. Primarily because human numbers have grown. Number one. Second thing, our disposable income has also gone. So many people are going to places which were prohibited earlier, which are not thrown open to the public as eco-tourist spots earlier. Now, many people are converging on that. Okay. How it goes to harm the wildlife? How it goes to harm the habitat of the place? I really don't know. But I believe animals don't have a voice. For example, in Venice is visited by millions of tourists worldwide. Okay. Now the people of Venice are bored. They want to cut down on tourists. It brings them a lot of money, but they say enough is enough because they can't lead normal lives. People have a voice. They can put up a banner. Unfortunately, animals don't have a voice. That's why you'll find the conflict between wild animals and people going on. So I believe ecotourism can take place in a restricted manner as long as it enriches our knowledge about our habitats and things like that. If it's going to be, yes, I have visited Norway, I have visited Japan, I have visited eco-friendly places and go about our lives. There's no purpose in that. I think there should be a restriction. It is harming animals. It's harming the environment. That's my
Well
view,
answered.
candid view.
Well answered, sir. It's a wonderful answer to that question, and you put your thoughts and views very rightly. Thank you very much. Now, sir, we'll shift our focus from the environment. Before we shift our focus from the environment and enter into the other zone, do you still have something that you would love to share about the environment and your work connected to the environment?
You have asked me enough questions where I have dealt about the environment with slides extempore. Your questions made me answer so. So that way, I think I've conveyed enough. The takeaway points is our world revolves around energy. When we talk about environment, we can understand deforestation, afforestation, everybody knows about it. What people don't know is they don't connect the dots. Because in India, as I told you, in a tropical country like India, we are not aware of climate change as much as we should. And many of us are blissfully aware that India is an extremely vulnerable country when it comes to energy, when it comes to transportation fuels. 85% of our crude comes from imports. What are we going to do about that? And much of the crude comes from volatile countries. Now, if there is a flare-up in those volatile countries, the price of crude goes up. How are we going to fund it? Can we increase the petrol price and diesel price at the pump? How long can we keep doing that? There will be riots. So this awareness needs to see much of our civilization, much of our progress depends on energy. So how we can cut down on wasteful uses of energy is extremely important. That can be electricity, that can be petrol, that can be diesel, that can be the materials used. Fortunately, in a place like Chennai, I would say the public transportation is good. People need to know, a lot of metros are coming. People need to use public transportation in large numbers. And the government has a role in that. The government has a role in that. And the awareness in the public needs to go a very long way. Many people are not aware of this. And our roads are filled with cars. I think there will be a time when congestion tax will come, when I see a future when the government will ask you, where is your parking slot? If you don't have a parking slot, you have to pay 10,000, 5,000 rupees for parking your car on the street. It's happening in London. If you want to park your car in a parking slot, you have to pay money to the government. That doesn't happen here. I'm not talking about going to a shopping mall, paying 100 rupees for 1 hour parking. I'm talking about parking your car in the street, which is free. You're not charged for that. There will be a day when the congestion of cars will be very high in our cities, when there's a fundamental reason to charge people. Huge cars, a single passenger in a huge car. Do we need a huge car for a single passenger? I don't think so. People need to get up and walk. And diabetes environment is close by. The more you walk, the better you get rid of your diabetes. Public transportation needs to be better. That is from the government side. From our side, can we use public transportation more than what we do? It's extremely important. Can we use less of electricity? And all other things which I told you earlier. That's it.
Thank you so much. You really explained that so well and created a lot of awareness today, how we should make use of the public transport. The government is doing its best, and we should also contribute, our time and energy and help the government to take, the initiative forward with regard to preserving the environment by using the public transport system, saving on energy, or maybe a pool. They say, it's like carpooling or something, if I'm not wrong. Like, one family takes all the children together to school, maybe on one particular day. Next day, another parent could take over. Like, instead of all going in individual cars or like autos or different vehicles. That would be nice. So thank you so much, sir, for sharing all of that. Before we sum up the session, I'd like you to share one beautiful incident with regard to your childhood. I would like you to go back down memory lane And remember a wonderful incident, maybe it could be that you were quite naughty when you were young, or you were very energetic and very passionate about your work and studies, or you were scolded by your mom or dad, you were lost somewhere, something that is like interesting.
I would be in a position to answer a question if I was to talk to you about my family. Just a minute. I lost my father when I was just 1.5 years old. He was an officer in the Indian Army. He died of a heart attack. Okay. So we were a family of 6. I was the last child. So I was a pampered child. Okay. And we didn't have much money. But still then I was a pampered child. It was very difficult for me to come out of that shell. Okay. I would say it is my brother. My immediate elder brother is no more. He told me, Sridhar, you have to sell yourself. And I am the only graduate in my family. Remember, it was hard grind for us. So I'm indebted to all my brothers and sisters, to him especially. Uh, I am what I am today, just because, how I was taken out of the shell, of the cocoon of embrace. And I've been leading a tough life, and later all those tough situations has done a lot of good to me. So it's very important that we move out of our comfort zone and learn new things. Like I'm learning about artificial intelligence today, and learning about how it can be used in climate change mitigation. So a few lectures are coming through. The seminal thing which changed my life is my visit to the United States Information Service Library. Otherwise, my awareness about environment may not have come to that. I would have moved to something else. But I think it's a divine providence that something has to happen. It happened. Beyond that, I don't think there is anything which changed my life.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that about your childhood. We are so sorry to hear that you lost your father at the young age of like hardly 1.5 years old you were. Nevertheless, you were pampered, you were given lots of love and attention, although it was tough, but your elder brother came in and has helped you to come out of the comfort zone, from the cocoon, as you mentioned that. Like many of us, even me as a parent, I like overprotect my children or like to be pampering them all the time. But then at one point of time, I realized that we have to make them jump out of that comfort zone. Then only they can survive in this world. Otherwise, it's quite difficult.
Yes.
And this is a message for all the parents, let your child break the comfort zone. Don't over pamper them, or don't keep them like, in all the comforts. Let them face the harsh reality of life at the earliest.
Yes.
So let them face such that they become very resilient in future.
Yes.
No matter what comes their way, they are able to face it.
Yes.
So nowadays, the younger generation, the parents who are now the latest moms and dads, they would like to give it all to their children. They have this in mind. I didn't enjoy this, or I didn't have this, but I'll give it to my child. And so they tend to over pamper the child, or over protect the child. And I am too guilty of it. I should say that. But then nevertheless, I've learned to let them break the comfort zone and, go into the space of reality and live and connect with people in the right way. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much. Nevertheless, I wanted you to share one incident, either with your siblings or in your school, any incident that comes to your mind as a kid, like below the age of 13. Do you have any wonderful memories?
No. No. Nothing eventful that would have changed my life. Nothing eventful like that. In fact, I've been leading a very uneventful life. Trying to pour my education into school. The events are happening now, where are more useful to society.
Yes. So as a kid, were you interested in playing with animals and like, with trees and plants? Were you connected, like observing them?
No.
So this
I think
developed.
it's my visit to the United States Information Service, learning about the environment, learning how we are impacting the environment, knowledge. That knowledge is very regarding nature. I love nature, like each one of us do. Each one of us inherently, without our knowing, we connect with nature. That's why we all run to nature parks. We connect with nature. But regarding knowledge about nature is something else. That I learned by study. I didn't allow my lack of education in the field of environment to let it die down, the passions die down. Maybe the raging obsession is not there, but it has not come down. I think I'm plenty more useful to society with my knowledge about environment, global warming, things like that. I think that visit to it. I cannot anything singularly responsible to changing my life apart from that.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing all of that. That's really very nice. You've shared your time, you've enlightened us. And I should really thank you for sharing your knowledge about diabetes and the environment as well. I'm sure we'll connect once again. There are several other questions that I have in mind to ask you and to, get your thought process and your experiences shared with us. We request you to share your time once more on the International Fab Talks in the near future as well.
Thank you. So nice.
Thank you, sir. Sir, one small request. Before we sum up the session, I'd like you to share with us 3 magical words which has been a part of your journey as well that could empower us in the right way. Apart from please, sorry, and thank you, if you could share with us 3 powerful words.
Back again to the same format. Reduce, recycle, reuse, and reconsider.
Wow. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a wonderful message. Thank you so much, sir. Stay blessed and stay connected.
Thank you. So nice.
Yes, sir. My dear friends, we've had a great time with sir, a learning experience, creating a lot of awareness about our health and the environment as well. When you meet people like this, you really feel that, yes, such people really are a blessing to the entire universe. And we should respect them and we should really learn from them how we could also be like them, inspiring people in the right way. With this, we'd like to sign off from the International Fab Talks for today. Before we sign off, there is a request. If you'd like sir to connect with you, if you'd like sir to connect with different aspects connected to the environment, definitely you could connect with sir. I'm sure he'll give you his time and he will make you understand the importance of saving the environment in the right way. If you like what the International Fab Talk team is doing, stay connected with us. Like, comment, subscribe, and share the videos such that others could get to know more about it. You could share it in various groups because it is based on health and environment. There's a lot of important tips, a lot of important information and awareness created today. Don't forget to love yourself, stay blessed, and protect the universe.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.